So g'day and welcome to the channel. So what aren't the pros telling you? What are we hiding? What aren't we sharing with you? Today's video, I'm going to share everything I've learned over the last 11 years and lots of the tips and lessons and my failures and what's helped me get to where I am. I've spent 11 years out in the field taking photos of birds and I love this hobby. I love wildlife photography and I want you to love it as much as I do. So after today's video, I do hope you learn something, you get some benefit from this and it helps you improve your photography. The first thing that we probably don't share enough and that you might not be aware of is that we all take bad photos. We all take soft shots. I take soft shots all the time. The problem for beginners is they see these stream of shots on social media. They see all these amazing photos and they think, oh, they must just take those photos all the time. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Every time I go out with my camera, I take soft shots and it's completely normal. Now I did an entire video on how to reduce your soft shots and how to improve your IQ, and I'll link that up here somewhere and you can view that at a later time. The other thing I don't think we do enough of as photographers is share our failures. We all fail. I fail a lot. I'm sure you fail as well. What I reckon would be really fun is if we just share our failures. In the comments below, I want to know what your most epic failure was. Share it below. I'm sure others will get a laugh of it. I will definitely read it and I'm going to share some of my best fails with you today. The first fail is telling your wife that you'll only be a few hours and then returning 8 hours later. Adding to that is forgetting to text your wife during those 8 hours that you're still alive. And then getting home and being slightly confused why your wife doesn't want to look at all the photos you've just taken during those 8 hours. I know that's funny, but in all seriousness, we really should let someone know where we're going, update your loved one or your partner. It's just a safety thing, and I do try to text my wife now. Honestly, I do. Okay, the second thing that I want to share with you is that a lot of the photos that you see online are actually set up. What I mean by that is the photographer, the videographer, they've staged it, they've set it up, they've attracted the bird either using water or food or some way. Pretty much it's a fabricated scenario to get the best possible quality, to get the best perch, and just to get these sorts of shots. And I think it's really important that beginners understand this, because often you'll see shots on social media, you'll see them in magazines, you'll see them on TV, and you think, how did they do that? How did they get those shots? Like you go out into the bush and you're walking around for a few hours and you're looking at your photos and you're going, my photos don't look anything like that. How did they get close to the birds and how did they get that background? A lot of the time it's because it was set up. Now I do this, other people do it, it's just something you need to be aware of. I've done a whole video on how I do setups. I took this red-capped robin on this beautiful wattle. What a beautiful photo. I love this photo, but it was set up, as in I attracted the bird onto the perch, I set it all up, as you can see here. Now this style is not for everyone, and I'm not saying this is better or worse than just wandering around. Each style has its place. This style is just a little bit easier if you want to get the bird up close and get lots of detail. You're more than likely going to get much better environmental behavior photos not setting it up. And I must admit, I think water birds and shorebirds are my favorite style, but I don't get a lot of water birds and shorebirds here in the bush. So again, just be aware that a lot of these shots are set up. Not all shots are set up though. It can be a little bit confusing. Like this crimson rosella, this isn't set up at all, but it's a nice shot. Yet this shot is set up and it's hard to tell the difference sometimes. And I think what would be nice is if we as photographers maybe shared when we share photos to say in the comments, water was used, food was used, call was used, or whatever it is, so that the person viewing the photo has at least some understanding how the photographer went about getting that photo. Okay, so another fail, there's quite a few of them. This fail, I'm sure some of you have done this, or I'm sure many of you have, and that's failing to charge your battery. Oh my God, I can remember one incident distinctly where I got up like well before the sun had come up. I drove 45 minutes to the beach, parked the car, I've got my camera, I've walked down to the wetland. Now I was going in the water, so I didn't have a spare battery with me. I've got my camera, I've got my gimbal, I've gone out into the water, I've crawled to these birds. I've probably spent, I don't know, half an hour getting into the right position, and then I'm about to take the photos. I turn on my camera, nothing. The camera's dead, and I'm going, uh-oh, what's going on? And then it dawns on me, I forgot to charge the battery. The battery is dead and I can't take any photos. And oh, that feeling, your heart sinks and you just think, oh no, what have I done? And of course, I have to back all the way out, go all the way back to the car, get a spare battery. Hopefully I've got a spare battery, and the moment was lost. And you know, I can't believe I've actually done that more than once. I do try now to definitely charge my batteries, have spare batteries nearby. I encourage you to do the same, but I'm sure many of you have done exactly what I've done, and that's forget to charge the batteries. I'm actually going to share another fail because I've got so many of them. And this one is, it's hard to tell, to be honest, but some of you would have experienced this, and we have to be careful around water. Water and cameras don't go together, and I've learnt the hard way, unfortunately. We need to respect the water. The first one that I did, and some of you have done this as well, is when we put our cameras on our gimbals, we have to balance them. Because if we don't balance them, what happens is that they obviously get out of sync. So if I pull this back and I let it go, see what happens to the camera? It's falling backwards. So what I had done is I had put the camera on the gimbal, I've gone out into the water and I'm lining up the shot, and for whatever reason I've let go and the camera's just done this, straight into the water. Oh, so it's pretty upset, and it can go the other way as well, and your lens goes into the water. So I highly encourage you to make sure that your lens is balanced on your gimbal before you go in the water. Something else you don't want to do when you're at the water is when you're laying down in the water and your camera's down low and you come up out of the water, make sure you step back from the camera. Otherwise, what might happen is you come out of the water, you bring all the water with you on your clothes, you go over your camera, and all the water goes straight into the top of your camera. The camera doesn't like that. The camera's not too happy when you pour a whole lot of salt water straight into the top of it. And the third thing, I'd hate for this to happen to anyone, is when you go to a wetland and you're going to go into the lake and you've got waders on, you've got a big heavy lens, a nice camera. It would make sense to check the bottom of that lake before you walked in there, you know, to make sure that it's not too deep, there's nothing slippery, because I'd hate for you to have your camera over your shoulder, walking into said lake, and then imagine if you slipped on a rock and fell backwards, and your gear's going backwards, you're going backwards, and you know that if your gear goes in the water, it's going to wreck it. So you fall in the water and you try to get the camera out of the water, and then the water starts going into your waders and it starts dragging you down and you start going under the water. And you have to make a choice. Do I drown or do I just let the gear go in the water? And of course, I mean, if you got in that situation, you'd have to let the gear go in the water. I'd hate for that to happen to anyone. I really would. Be careful when you're by the water. Definitely check before you go in, and just be aware that water does really kill cameras. Oh, that was hard to tell. So probably one of the, can you hear that? Kookaburra. Do you mind? I'm trying to film a video here. Thank you. So one of the biggest things that helped me when I started out was trying to find tame birds, or birds that allowed a close approach. Because one of the issues we have when we start out is we can't get close, we crop heavily, and the bird just doesn't look very good. So ideally what we want to do is do a bit of research, go to somewhere where the birds are used to humans, and you'll be surprised just how much better those photos will look. And a lot of photographers spend a lot of time trying to find a species like that. So you can get the same species that's easy and hard to photograph. What I mean is, on my property here, I have Australian magpies. These magpies are strictly wild. They don't like humans. I cannot get near them. They just fly away. The only time I photographed them was under a blind at a water spot. However, I can drive 15 minutes from here down into suburbia, and the magpies are so tame, you'll get headshots, not a problem whatsoever. So I would never get those headshots with the wild birds here. And there's lots of ducks and there's lots of birds exactly like that. I do know that there's lots of birds that just simply won't let you get anywhere near them, and I understand that, and we need a few other approaches to get close to them. However, highly suggest that you try tame birds first to get up your skills and get some nice shots. So you'll also be surprised that sometimes the birds just come to you. Like, you can be laying down and a bird just lands right in front of you. I'll never forget the day I was laying at the beach watching some waders, and an eastern curlew literally landed maybe 6 meters in front of me. This is one of the flightiest, hardest birds to photograph in Australia, and it just simply landed in front of me. And I got the best shots I've ever taken of this bird. I highly doubt I'd ever get that close by trying to approach it or anything like that. So sometimes you just get lucky, but definitely try those tame birds first. The fourth major fail that happens to me, and it happens quite regularly, is memory cards. And I don't know why I struggle with this, I just do. But my most common one is I forget to format the memory card before I start shooting. So I'll download the photos, I'm out the next day during a session, and I'm taking some shots, And then all of a sudden, the memory card says it's full. And I'm thinking, oh no, I forgot to format the card. The card's full. I can't format it now because I've just taken a few hundred shots. So I have to change the card. Hopefully I've got a spare card nearby. It's just faffing around and it's horrible, especially if you're in a burst and something's happening in front of you. So Duade, just format the cards before you start shooting. Just try to remember that. The second thing, and it breaks my heart that I've done this, and maybe some of you have done this before, it's when you format the card and you haven't actually downloaded the photos and you don't realise till some time later. And I did this on a trip. I went to Queensland, took all these photos, and for whatever reason, I've erased and formatted the card and I hadn't actually backed them up, and those photos are gone. I'll never get them back. It breaks my heart. Thankfully, I've only actually done that once that I can remember, but you got to be so careful with backing up your photos and not deleting them by accident. So something else you might not be aware of, but there is a bit of Photoshop trickery that goes on from time to time with some of the photos that you see on social media and online. As photographers, we do have the ability to edit our photos. We can remove things, we can add things, we can change colors. Processing is very, very powerful and it's a wonderful tool and I do use it, but we don't always necessarily share what we've done, and it can be a bit misleading at times because you're not sure exactly how a certain photo was taken. That's just part of photography. I'm not against it in any means. I'm very open with how I process and I encourage you to do the same, but just be aware that you can remove branches, you can change colors, you can add things. For example, this wedge-tailed eagle shot that I got, I like it, but I didn't like that branch running through the head of the bird. I didn't like the power pole in the background. So using Photoshop, I've actually removed those things. So I have altered the original image, but I've created an image that I prefer, and I'm happy to do that, and I'll share that with you about how I edit my photos. So fail number 5, yep, they just keep on coming, and that has to do with your exposure and your settings. Don't worry, we all stuff it up from time to time, and I've failed numerous times. I've either underexposed it, I've overexposed it, my shutter speed was too high, my ISO was too high. You know, the things change and things happen so quickly. You shouldn't expect yourself to get it right all the time. Don't be hard on yourself. It will improve over time. Mirrorless is far, far better than DSLRs because it's very hard to stuff up your exposure because it's live through the viewfinder, but I've lost count the amount of times I've stuffed it up. So go easy on yourself. I remember one incident where I got the exposure completely wrong. I was photographing a kingfisher and then a sulfur-crested cockatoos landed on a perch, and I've turned the camera, and without thinking this was on a DSLR, I've just rattled off the shots, and unfortunately it was just blown. The whites were just I couldn't recover them, so I completely stuffed that up. And even recently, this kookaburra image, I badly underexposed it by at least a stop and a half with the R5, I think. So, you know, it happens. You know, I guess the key is to recognize when you get it wrong, find out why you got it wrong, and then try to improve your technique over time. But nobody's perfect. You'll always stuff up your settings from time to time. So just be aware of that. I think one aspect of wildlife photography that often gets overlooked is just how much time that photographer has put into learning their skill, learning their craft, and capturing those images. I estimate I've probably spent thousands of hours in the field capturing images. In my first year alone, I think I went out close to 100 times, probably 300 odd hours or more, went on a few trips, and my skills and photos improved dramatically over that time. And it was only because I put that time in. I think what happens is we look at these curated social media feeds and we see all these amazing images. What we don't realize is that photographer has probably taken hundreds of thousands of images to collate those. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've probably taken, I don't know, 300,000-400,000 images, maybe more, and I've only got a handful that are truly remarkable. You know, you can't get those shots sitting on the couch. You can't get them watching this video. You've got to be out there. And often that's what's happened to me. I've just been in the right time at the right place, and a lot of those experiences have never been repeated. Even though I've been out in the field, like my black-winged stilt image that I've shown numerous times of these two birds, I just love it. And I've never seen something like this again. You know, the images where I got with the clear water and the reflections of the redneck stint. Again, very rarely am I ever going to get that again. And even that shot I took of the sulfur-crested cockatoo last year, will I ever get that shot again? Not sure, probably doubtful. The only reason I got those shots was because I was out there with my camera. So grab your camera, head out there and take some photos. That'll increase your odds of getting that keeper. All right, so fail number 6 is cropping too hard. When we start, we often can't get close, so we just crop too hard. And I was guilty of this. What happens when we crop too hard? The image looks terrible. We just can't get the detail. And I actually took a photo just last week to emphasize this point. Here's a photo of an eastern rosella. I took this with the R5, a beautiful camera, and I was using the 800 f11, but the bird was miles away. The weather was terrible. I think I was at ISO 3200. And when we zoom in, check out the detail on that bird. It's pretty bad, and you might be thinking, oh, you need to throw away that R5. But that's purely because I was too far away and I was cropping too much in the weather. However, when we compare that to another shot of an eastern rosella taken on a 5D4, so an older camera, but we had beautiful light and I was really close to this bird. It was a watering spot, and just look at the feather detail. So is the 5D4 a better camera than the R5? No, it was just purely I was closer, the light was better, and we just need to appreciate that you have to get close to get that sort of detail. If we're miles away and we're cropping heavily, we're always going to have issues. And so if you're having issues, just check how much you're cropping. Are you over cropping? What was the light like? That's going to heavily influence your image quality. And I did do a video all about image quality that you're free to check out and you might find helpful. So the other thing that's important to stress is you do not need the best gear to take good photos. You might see me with the R5, the 500, you might see other photographers with their big 600s, their big lenses, and think, oh gee, I need that gear to get those shots. So Duade, why do you have this expensive gear? Because expensive gear allows you to take shots that cheaper gear just struggles with. So your ISO is better, your autofocus is better, you can shoot in low light, you can get the bird bigger because of the focal length. There are advantages to this. However, it's not necessary. I have taken some beautiful shots on really old gear. When I started, as you all know, I started with a 40D and then a 7D, old Canon crop bodies on a 400 5.6. You can probably pick up this kit for about 800 used. So I had a very basic kit and I took lots of shots that I really, really love. When I go back to my favorite shots from 2012, I think it was, there's lots of nice shots there. This mulga parrot, I love how this looks. The trousers and on the ground, the great background, it all just works for me. How about this splendid fairy wren? Like that bird just pops, great color, again taken with affordable gear. And this flight shot of a shy albatross, one of my favorite shots, as it's just cruising over the water. Again, taken with a 7D and a 400 5.6. So what I want to touch on, and I think this is quite important, is just because somebody is a professional doesn't mean that they take better photos or they're a better photographer. I actually hate that title of professional. I think it implies that they're better somehow or they're more worthy. And I just think it's a whole load of bollocks, to be honest. You know, I'm just a normal bloke that likes going out with my camera and photographing wildlife. I fail all the time. And just because I make money out of it doesn't mean I'm any better. I think we need to look at it as in a community of people taking photos and enjoying themselves. We shouldn't be comparing ourselves based on if you make money or followers. We should be comparing ourselves to previous versions of ourselves. And as long as we see some gradual improvement, then that's a great thing. We need to enjoy this hobby and this passion for what it is. And that's just taking photos of birds. It's as simple as that. Just get out, take photos, stop comparing and judging with other people, and just enjoy ourselves. So I think that's really important. Before I finish up this video, I just want to go through quite a few more fails, just for a bit of a laugh, and you might find a few of these enjoyable and you might relate to them. So here we go. So forgetting to take the lens cap off the camera, going to take a photo and wondering why the camera is black. Done that a few times. I shouldn't admit to this, but falling asleep, waiting for a bird to turn up, waking up and missing the bird. I've done that a few times. Getting lost looking for a location, done that heaps. Forgetting my focus limiter is on. So on these lenses, you can set your focus limiter, say 8 meters to infinity. I remember doing that, and then the next day I've gone out, the birds come within 8 meters, I'm trying to focus, the lens won't focus and the camera won't focus. I thought my lens was broken, couldn't figure it out. It wasn't till much later that I realized I'd left the focus limiter on. That's a good one. Okay, this one hurts, not securing your tripod and then having it blow over in the wind and wrecking your lens or your camera. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and listening to all my fails. I hope it makes you feel a bit better about your photography. Again, I'd love to hear your fails in the comments. I can't wait to read those. Thanks to all the new members that are supporting the channel. If you're not aware, for less than the price of a cup of coffee per month, you can support the channel, and it helps me make videos like this and get out into the field and review gear. So I'm very appreciative of that. Thanks to all the subscribers who have subscribed to this channel, and of course for hitting that thumbs up that lets YouTube know that my video is worth watching, and hopefully other people will be watching it as well. So thanks again, take care, happy birding, happy failing, and see you in the next one. See you later.